Welcome everyone to the Minnesota WIC Participant-Centered Webinar Series. My name is Karen. I'll be facilitating the webinar today. And during the webinar series, we've been sharing ideas and best practices for providing participant-centered WIC services. Joining me today is my colleague Marcus. He'll be doing the behind-the-scenes work. He'll monitor the phone lines and make sure that things run smoothly. The topic we'll talk about today is having difficult conversations. We'll talk about the challenge, why they're hard, and how that impacts our performance when we are engaged in them. We'll also talk about ideas and strategies to approach difficult or challenging conversations effectively. We sent you a survey and asked for your ideas, and we'll share those suggestions today. We'll talk about PCS strategies that you could use. Also, several of you might have read the book Crucial Conversations. Many concepts in this book really mirror our intent with PCS and can be helpful when it comes to having difficult conversations in difficult situations. So I'll bring some of those concepts in today. And this webinar is meant for those that supervise or manage others, but the examples that we'll talk about today, although they're about employees, being effective at having difficult conversations can be valuable for anyone. So if you're not a coordinator or a supervisor or a manager, I still think that you'll find value in this topic because all of us will need to engage in challenging conversations in our lives with spouses, with bosses and supervisors or colleagues, with friends and neighbors. And the better we make these conversations, the less painful they'll be. We'll hopefully have more successful conversations that lead to better outcomes if we can improve in these skills. So why have this webinar? Several of you chose this topic on the survey we sent out last year that asked for webinar topics. And the reason is that some conversations are hard or difficult. Often they involve emotion or differences of opinion. And often we avoid them because often they're painful to have. And then this avoidance leads to other challenges for us. Now, some people have a higher comfort level with difficult conversations than other people do. I know that historically I've had a really hard time in this area. And this is an area I attend to and I really try to improve in every time the opportunity comes up. And they do come up. But the more we can practice and use communication skills that we've been talking about with PCS, the better we'll become, which means issues are dealt with more effectively, with better outcomes, leading to better services for our participants, and a better work environment for staff. And that's what we're really going for. On the survey we sent out a few weeks prior to the webinar, we asked for examples of difficult conversations. And here are some themes that we heard from responses. Time management issues. So arriving late to work or late back from lunch, taking a long time with participants on a regular basis. So it's a pattern and not simply an extended time for certain participants that might need it. Team dynamics. Staff members trying to build alliances, talking behind people's backs, creating a subversive atmosphere, that us versus them kind of dynamic. Maybe they try to win support for their own position among staff while not communicating to their supervisor. That was one response. Work style. Too many side conversations. Maybe they're too quiet or shy, or maybe they're too domineering in their work style. Performance issues. Perhaps during observations there's a pattern of practice that needs to be addressed. Maybe it's an incorrect policy or procedure. Maybe it's the content that's not appropriate or not correct. Maybe they're not documenting properly or thoroughly. Or maybe they're documenting too much. So it could be a lot of issues. Disagreements with policy or vision. Staff might disagree with a WIC message or policy or mandated screen question. Appearance or image issues. Perhaps their clothes are inappropriate or the smell of smoke on their clothes. Maybe they're not supporting or role modeling positive nutrition behaviors. Maybe there's Coke bottles or McDonald's bags on their desk that are visible to participants. That's an unspoken but really powerful message to participants. Refusal to attend to advice. So you've had several conversations about a particular topic and there hasn't been a change. And I included this one separately because now it's not the original issue. Now the true problem isn't that original thing. It becomes failure to live up to their commitments, and this is the important conversation that we need to have, that difficult conversation. So these are some examples of those types of conversations that we might have. So why the avoidance? We might send an email to avoid a difficult conversation. We often leave voicemails. Maybe we break up with someone on a Post-it. Any tactic to avoid the challenging conversation. And it's human nature. It's human nature to avoid difficult conversations, and we're masters at it. We shy away from conversations that might be uncomfortable or that might potentially make things worse. And often, these conversations do go badly. And why is that? One reason is that our stress response is partly to blame for this. It's that natural body response to stressors, like having a difficult conversation. And this can actually, the stress response can make us be at our worst, not our best during these conversations. So when the stress response is triggered, adrenaline is pumped into the system, preparing you to fight or flight. And our bodies inherited this amazing system from the caveman days when we needed to either face that saber-toothed tiger or run as fast as possible away from it. And when faced with the stress response of a difficult situation or a difficult conversation, this response kicks in. It pulls blood away from the core and the brain and to the extremities so that we can run or fight. But unfortunately, with difficult conversations, in this situation, our brain and clear, calm thinking is what we need, not to run. So that defensive mechanism to protect ourselves can do us a disservice here. And often these difficult conversations, they're not scheduled sometimes. You don't have the ability to prepare for them all the time. They just come up. All of a sudden, you find yourself in a difficult conversation, and that instinct takes over, and it makes it worse. We go right into the defensive mode without even a conscious thought. It happens instantaneously almost. And so when we can, we often take that avoidance path. But this can lead to a lot of problems as well. On the survey, we asked what the consequences were for avoiding these difficult conversations. And here's what some of you said. Nothing changes or it gets worse, and it's more difficult to have the conversation in the future. So now the behavior is ingrained. We put ourselves in a situation of tacitly encouraging the behavior by staying mute. Situations grow out of hand when not addressed. Staff may not know they're doing something wrong, have no opportunity to improve. Resentment builds up among staff and leadership. This can go in both directions. Absolutely, this can go in both directions. Resentment can build and build. And then what happens is that when I finally do speak out, there's so much emotion behind it that's built up that these conversations often aren't productive but harmful. And when I stew in my negative emotions and I don't address it, that stress response continually hurts me. My health suffers. Staff morale decreases, poor customer service. The services to the participants suffer. Our reputation gets hurt. Caseload can drop, and our ability to help people who really need our help is compromised. So consequences for both the external client and our own staff morale. Mistakes keep happening, and other staff need to deal with mistakes, which may cause resentment and build in other people and then impact relationships throughout the agency. So some reasons why finding ways to make these difficult conversations more effective is so important. The first strategy I want to address for having difficult conversations is to have a goal. So we really want to think, what do we want to achieve from this conversation? Because maintaining that focus will help us when that emotional response takes over and then other motives start creeping in. So some common motives that could overtake us are the need to be right, the need to win the conversation, the need to defend my position. We're all so hardwired and trained from an early age with this need to win. And these motives will often sabotage your efforts in the discussion. So to do this, to have a goal, I ask myself questions. Questions like, what do I want the outcome of this conversation to be? What do I truly want? What's my motive? So think about a time when someone gave you feedback about something and you didn't go into that defensive mode. It's often because you believed the other person had your best interest in mind, that they truly wanted to help you and you respected their opinion. You knew their motives were good. And this is why we want to focus on those positive motives. So is our motive to help them improve? Is it to improve the atmosphere of the office? To help them be successful? To improve our working relationship? To help create a service delivery environment that will be effective and meaningful for participants? So thinking about that. And you also want to ask other questions like, what don't I want in this situation? I don't want a heated discussion that ends badly. I don't want resentment to build on either side. When we use questions, what we're doing is we're forcing ourselves to use our brain. And our body will respond by sending blood to our brain and away from other parts of our body that are involved in that fight or flight response. And that gives us those precious few moments to just be conscious and then to use the strategies that will be effective. Often, success in these discussions will mean fighting our natural instinct. But each time we do it, we train our brain, and it will get easier each time. We ask for your suggestions for difficult conversations, and here are some of your responses. Making sure the conversation is private and not held during a busy time of day or at the end of the day when the staff person may be tired. Use a PCS approach. State what you or the other staff has noticed or has been reported in a factual way and ask for their input. State that you're here to help. Have the conversation early. Don't wait too long. Do it in private. Plan ahead for your objective or outcome for the conversation. Think about the characteristics of the person that you need to consider. Have a direct and open conversation with ideas for moving forward. Be non-judgmental. Gather info about the situation and focus on fixing the problem. So some really great suggestions here. In order to have a productive conversation, we said that we can't be in a defensive mode, that fight or flight response. Well, that holds true for the other person in the conversation as well. We need for them to be able to think and rationalize, because if they're in that defensive mode, they might fight, which could look like resistance or anger or blame. Or they could take flight, which could look like silence or avoidance. And neither one of those responses is going to be productive. If our goal is to create that shared solution, that's not going to get us there. We want to develop tools to make these conversations safe. When they're safe, both people can contribute. So if we're constantly looking for signs that if someone doesn't feel safe, and we'll talk about recognizing those signs in just a little bit. On the survey, we asked for your suggestions for making difficult conversations safe, and here are some of your responses. Recognizing the person's strengths, asking for their perspective on the situation, welcoming their input. So you're creating that dialogue that leads to those successful conversations. Open with the purpose so they know what to expect. Seek their side and clarify. Have empathy. Listen as well as talk. Calm and even. Plan talking points. Maybe send a reminder email to all staff so one person is not called out. Or maybe discuss as a group in staff meetings. Oh, as a group. So today we'll be talking more about those one-on-one discussions, but this is also another avenue. Later I'm going to talk about preventing some difficult conversations. And this suggestion almost goes in that section. Are there several people in the office doing something? Do you notice a trend in services? Is there something that most people need to work on? Say it's customer service. You're noticing a trend in the office. Then maybe a group discussion or training would be effective. Or if it's a policy or procedure that people are having an issue with, then maybe it's a clarifying email or group discussion, and that would be appropriate. So what I'd like is there's some themes here. One is that the conversation is not one-sided. You're asking input from the other person, and you're welcoming it. You're listening. Another is that having a plan will help. Having a purpose, staying calm, staying on message, using empathy. So great suggestions that encompass the core elements of having a difficult conversation effectively. So several of you might have read the book Crucial Conversation. It's a good book, and we are familiar with a lot of the concepts in the book from our work with participants, because a lot of it relates to participant-centered services. And from our practice with effective participant-centered communication skills, we're naturally going to be used to using these skills. So in the book, one of the main things they do is to outline a way to have difficult conversations effectively, making it as safe as possible for the other person to share. So a few of the strategies. So the first two, share your facts and tell your story. What they say is to start with the facts before telling your story. So your story is the conclusions that you've made about the facts. What we do is we often add motive to the facts. They're doing it for a particular reason. They're doing it to hurt others. Maybe they don't care. They don't respect me. Some kind of, we add the intent behind the facts. And we all do this. We all create our own story. I'll give you an example. In my role, as many of you know, I often do training. And you get a lot of different people at training. And occasionally I'll get someone who has their back to me the whole time when I'm training, or sits right up front and then proceeds to fall asleep. Those are the facts. But what I do is I take those facts and I tell myself a story. Well, they don't respect my training, or they find me boring, or they're angry to be here. I'm not a good trainer. And as a result of the story I tell myself, I create emotions to go with it. I feel angry or hurt or sad. I don't feel good enough. And this will impact the rest of my training that I provide for everyone else in the room. But I have the ability to control that story that I tell myself. I could have easily told myself, maybe they were up last night with a sick child, and that's why they're sleepy today. Maybe they're uncomfortable socially, and maybe that's why they have their back to me. There could be so many different stories out there. So we do want to separate stories from facts. Now, you do want to tell your story because it puts it in context for people and why you feel it's important to bring up these facts that you're telling them. But what we want to do is start with the facts, and then we tell our story and ask for their input. We talk tentatively about our story because we can encourage a different viewpoint too. We want their input. The facts might be that they've come in late 4 times in a row in the last month, and they've come back from lunch several times in the same time period. And the story I might put on it might be that they're not respecting the rules and they're putting undue strain on the rest of the staff. So instead of starting with that and leading with that, I'm going to lead with the facts. And these are less likely to build that defensiveness. Their facts are less emotional. And when I do tell my story, I do it kind of tentatively, knowing that there might be other information that I don't have. It could be about their home life. It could be about their interaction with other people in the agency. And I want to ask for their opinion, their story, their input, to round it out. So I want to express my opinion, and I want to encourage others to express theirs as well. So I could start with maybe, I'd like to talk to you about something. You've arrived late 4 times in the last month and have come back to lunch late at least 3 times in the past 2 weeks. This might not be your intent, but what it does is it's creating a burden for the other staff members that have to cover you. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. So introducing it tentatively. I'd like to do a poll question about introducing a topic in a safe way. And I want to use one of the examples from the survey. And that is when a person smokes during the day and there's smoke on their clothes, and that might cause nausea or allergy concerns for WIC participants. So certainly a difficult conversation to have, a sensitive conversation to have, because it's not about work, it's about additional things. So how would we address that smoke on their clothes? So what I'll do is offer you some possible introductions to that conversation and see if there's any that you like. And I welcome other responses as well. So how would we address smoke on their clothes? I will read the responses and then we can vote. So you could say, I'd like to talk to you about the smell of smoke on your clothes after you have a cigarette during the day. What I don't want you to think is that I don't respect your freedom to control your own behaviors and make your own decision to smoke. I respect that. What I do want to discuss is the impact on the participant and if we could find a way to decrease that. Another option could be, this topic is difficult for me to discuss, but I value our working relationship and your commitment to the participant, so I feel it's important to bring this up. I'd like to discuss the smell of smoke on your clothes. Some participants are very sensitive to this or have allergies. I'd like to discuss some possible solutions. Or, I have a topic to discuss. I've received some complaints from participants about the smell of smoke on your clothes. They've expressed concern. I know you don't intend to have a negative impact on participants, but I fear the smoke on your clothes will negatively influence the quality services you are providing to participants, and I don't want that to happen. Can we discuss some ways to prevent that? Or maybe you have another one that you'd like to add. So go ahead and vote now, everybody. And I invite you to, there's a chat box down below. If you have another way to introduce that conversation, please add it. Okay, it looks like they're starting to slow down, so I will broadcast the results. And so far, it looks like number 2 is the most popular response. And this response starts off with a really common and really effective way to introduce a difficult discussion. And that's to admit that it's difficult for you to talk about, but you value the relationship, and so it's important for you to bring it up. It's a really safe introduction to almost any difficult conversation to start with. I'm going to go back to the sharing. When reading the signs of defensiveness or resistance, we notice they're the same often that we look for in participants, right? These signs might be silence, sarcasm, anger, blame, labeling. We want to get good at recognizing these signs because when someone's in this defensive mode, just like participants, the likely outcome is that nothing will change. This is not where behavior change will take place. Now the conversation is not about the original topic, it's about defending themselves. The other person feels like you have an ill intent. They don't believe you have a good motive. And so this is a time to stop and address the resistance before moving on in the conversation. So when resistance happens, it's helpful to do this, to stop, and then to reestablish that safety, make them feel safe. So I want to go back and I want to address their concerns and then clarify my motives again to create that mutual understanding. And it's often about stating what you don't intend, what you're not intending. For example, what I don't want is for you to think that you're not valued, or this issue isn't about the quality of your work. That's strong. I appreciate and value the services you offer participants. So stating what you're not intending, and then stating what you do want. But what I do want to discuss is the frequency of when you arrive late to work or call in sick. So starting with what you don't intend is often the most important part, because that's where you're negating that premise that you don't respect them or that you have that ill intent towards them. You're fixing that misunderstanding that they have that put them on the defensive in the first place. And you can use this technique at the start of a conversation when you think they might feel unsafe or they have a history of reacting defensively in conversations. You might want to start with this, what you don't intend and what you intend. Or sometimes it might come up in the discussion and you have to continually go back, step out of the conversation, address the safety, and then go back into the content. Sometimes addressing resistance might include apologizing when appropriate. It can be hard sometimes to fight that natural urge to be right or to win the conversation, but if you had a hand to play in the situation, admitting it can help. For example, did we avoid the conversation for too long? Was it our error, and can we admit that? Did we step into defensiveness for a minute? It's okay to apologize and say, let me back up. That's absolutely fine. So you want to address that resistance. And also, we need to be attentive to what are our own clues that a conversation has entered that critical point and needs to be fixed. So what are our own tendencies under stress? What are our own emotional, physical, or behavioral signs that things might not be going in the right direction? The tough part about having difficult conversations is that when other people feel unsafe, they often attack you. So our natural response is to defend or to attack. So now we're in that unproductive zone as well. It's our natural instinct. So I have to change that pathway and stop that chain of events in my head that happens so fast. I have to change that message from I'm being attacked to they're feeling unsafe in this conversation. That's what's going on here. And so that's what needs to change. So you need to recognize what are your signs and when have you entered that defensive mode. I'm starting to recognize a lot of my cues, and they're different for all of us. One of mine is hyperbole, which I use all the time anyway, even when I'm in a productive mode. So it's always my go-to when I'm in a stress response. I say things like, you've done this a gazillion times, or I use absolutes like, you do this constantly, or it's been forever. And so those productive things. Or often when I get in a stress response, I cut people off because I'm afraid I won't be heard. So I have to get my opinion in there. And these are signs that something's not working and signs for me to back up a little bit. And the faster we can recognize them, the faster we can back up and change that message from I'm being attacked to this person feels unsafe. And then we think about our intent, bring consciousness to our strategies, back up and address their concern, and then clarify our purpose again. Other strategies for having difficult conversations, and these will look familiar to you: listening, asking, reflecting, asking for input, goal setting. The same skills we use on with participants every day. Listening, we know, is a sign of respect. We want to listen for their point of view. And then we need to be ready to hear it. That's the thing about difficult conversations. And it may involve them getting angry sometimes or defensive sometimes. And we have to resist that defensive mode and stay curious with our listening. We want to ask the questions and then stay open to the responses. Show that genuine interest that we do have in making this a mutual conversation. We can use our questions to collect their input. You can invite different points of view, and this will make the other person feel safe. Questions like, please let me know if you see it differently. I really want to hear your thoughts. Maybe I'd really like your opinion. I'd really like to see the other side of what I'm missing here, or what am I missing here. So admitting that you might not have the whole story and you want their perspective, that's really safe. And for someone that's really retreated into silence when you're having a difficult conversation, which isn't helpful either, For someone that does that, you might even want to start the ball rolling for them. Say things like, are you feeling that I'm not respecting you? Are you feeling hurt? And helping them out a little bit. So asking for their input. We all know the value of reflecting. It helps us understand their position. It helps us clarify intent. It encourages them to open up more, to trust that you do want to understand the situation. An important point about reflecting is that reflecting does not necessarily equate to agreement. We're trying to understand their point of view, not necessarily that we agree with it or we support it. And often what happens when you do reflect is they talk more, and you find out there is often an area of agreement somewhere in there. And this is often where we can agree and build on something and work towards a mutual solution. So I want to do a poll question here on offering a solution. So I'm going to read you a scenario, and then I want to offer some different reflections that we could add or put into this conversation and see what you think. So say the situation was that you have a staff person who sees a lot less participants than everyone else in the office. They've been trained and they've been working long enough where they should be up to speed and seeing near the other staff people, but they're consistently seeing a small number of participants. So you could start the conversation with them and say, I want to talk about the average number of participants you see per day. On average, you've seen about 30% less participants than your counterparts in the office. I don't want you to think I'm saying you're not providing great services. I know you care about participants and having those quality conversations. I do realize that some participants' appointments take longer, some take less. What I do want to talk about, though, is the average number of participants that you see. We don't have a certain number of participants. We do have a certain number of participants to serve, and when you serve less, the others in the office have to pick up that amount. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. So they hear that, and what they come back with is anger. So they're feeling unsafe. So they come back with, that's such a double message that I'm getting. You say it's all about participant-centered services and having quality discussions. But then when we do, we're punished for it. It's all about caseload. That's what really matters. We're expected to do all this stuff, collect this information, have a meaningful discussion, all in a short time. It can't be done. So I want to think about what's a reflection that we can give this person to help them feel understood, to help them feel safe, and to keep them talking. So I'm going to do a poll question with some possibilities, and maybe you have others. So first I'll read the response again and then the reflection. It's such a double message. You say it's all about participant-centered services and having quality discussions, but then when we do that, we're punished. It's all about caseload. That's really all that matters. We're expected to do all this stuff, collect all this information, and have a meaningful discussion all in a short time. It can't be done. So possible reflections could be, you feel like we're giving conflicting vision of what we're looking for. Or you feel that appointments that are participant-centered will take longer. Or this is a passionate topic for you. Providing quality services and meaningful conversations for participants are important for you. Or you want to find a way to look at all of that process and procedure and how we can integrate it better to keep that focus on the conversation and have more time for that and less time for those non-essential things. Or maybe there's another response that you like better. So go ahead and vote now. And feel free to put any comments in the chat box. It looks like it's closed, so I'm going to go ahead and broadcast the results. And it looks like the third response is the most popular, and that's, it's the passionate topic for you. Providing quality services and meaningful conversations for participants is important to you. So with a reflection, what we can do is, what it helps us do is keep the person talking, and we can see positions where there's potential areas for agreement. So in this situation, you might agree that there are two sometimes potentially conflicting goals with WIC, quantity and quality. Do you agree that maintaining quality is important and finding a way to do that while still providing services for all participants in a timely manner, that that's our goal? Do you both agree on that? So in this conversation, it really has the potential for finding that element of agreement and then building from there. So with difficult conversations, there has to be a plan. So what will change? How will we resolve the situation? And again, our PCS skills help us in this situation. So asking for their input. If they are involved in the goal-setting process, they will be more likely to have buy-in. So we want to ask for their input and ideas. It's more likely that things will change if they're involved in the process. You have to decide, how will you decide? If it's a group conversation, you'll need to be clear, how will the decision be made? Will you make it alone, or is it made at a higher level beyond you? Will you ask for input or consultation and then make a decision from there? Will there be a voting process? Will you try to work for consensus in the group? All of these are different decision-making paths, and they're all valid in certain situations. And some are more effective in certain situations than others. It matters when you use them. So when you want to make a plan, you want to be specific. What's going to happen? By when? How is it going to happen? And then how and when will follow-up occur? Maybe it's milestones that we're going to look for to know that it's happening, that it's taking place, whatever it is. And you'll want to record the details of the plan. So some things to think about towards the end of that difficult conversation is moving to that goal-setting process. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about preventing a certain amount of difficult conversations or the need for difficult conversations. Now, we can't prevent all of them, and I'm not even sure we'd want that, but we can prevent some of them. Benjamin Franklin said that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So can we prevent some things? Can we put in place some tactics to avoid need for certain types of conversations and set you up for success? We could look at hiring strategies. Look at the questions we're asking. Are we asking the right questions to really determine their style, their qualifications, their personality type? Are we really preparing people for the realities of the job during the hiring process? How many people are involved in the hiring process? Is it just one person making the decision, or are there other perspectives? Is it a shared decision? We can also set expectations when they first start. Set them early so people know what to expect and how to act. And can we talk through what happens when when the expectations aren't met, and that these are the things to expect. We can also approach situations timely. Many of you said, do it earlier, don't wait. Don't let the behavior become ingrained or have resentment build up. So we want to have the confidence to have these conversations and not let them build up and have them timely. And if possible, we'd love to prevent some of them. So in the survey, we asked about what expectations are important to set with new staff. And your responses fell into a few categories. Expectations about communication, expectations about job performance, and expectations around participant-centered services. So here are some expectations around communication. That communication both ways will be open and upfront. Staff know how WIC staff are expected to work together as a team and tell them to communicate any problems to the supervisor. So setting expectations that you can come to me, that rumors, alliances, these aren't part of our team dynamics. The expectation to work as a team in a positive manner. Be responsible to talk for our own self. Request meetings to share concern and perspective. Continuous coaching and feedback. Open-mindedness. Plan to continue to learn new things. that we believe in continual growth and improvement, and we welcome feedback. That's how we operate. What are expectations about job performance? Here are your suggestions around that. Make sure staff know what is expected of them regarding conduct, break, and lunchtime. WIC takes a long time to learn and figure out. This is a big one to prevent discouragement and frustration that will often manifest itself in other non-productive ways. What exactly the staff person will be reviewed on and how? Can you give them any tools for the review process and discuss them? Having no secrets, everything's above board. This program is team-oriented. We learn from each other. When mistakes are made, it's a good learning experience. We do chart audits and observations, which can be helpful for everyone to learn from. I really like this one. We're not afraid to make mistakes. In fact, we welcome them. That they're learning tools for us. So none of us are perfect. We don't expect to be perfect. We don't intend it. And we help each other grow and learn. And that's what we're about. Expectations about PCS. That you will encounter rude or ungrateful people. Most are very polite and appreciative, but be ready for the few bad eggs. That we will encounter them, and that we can develop skills to make these encounters better and to minimize the number of them. Although we can never eliminate them totally, there are solutions to make them better. Stress the PCS mindset of meet the client where they're at and always be respectful of what they know. So the core nature of PCS, it's not about telling, it's about evoking motivation and where they're at. Not every participant wants to change or see things as a problem. Things are handled differently in different cultures too. Encourage the need to be aware and mindful of different diversity on the level of learning, beliefs, culture, and expectations. So setting these expectations early will help increase their chances of success within your agency. A few things that we can do within this group. We can help set shared expectations. So maybe with the whole group, we could do an exercise. Maybe as a group, we could brainstorm together how we want to act as a team. What will be our rules of conduct or our guidelines that will help to guide us? What do we want to set? Or maybe another activity could be that we outline the top 5 things that are most important for us about this participant-centered style. What do we feel is the most important? And we can use this to help new people that come on board and to help us get caught up, to help us not get caught up in that day-to-day detail. So having these discussions will help set those shared expectations among the group. Can we involve everyone in the process of creating clinic improvements and make sure that ongoing growth is everybody's responsibility in the office? Asking for this input will create buy-in and empower those team members. So what can we do to involve everyone and to do this jointly? So I'd like to offer time now. We have some time for people just to come off mute and share, or you could type in the chat box, whatever you feel more comfortable with. But I want people to offer people this time to come off if they'd like to. You could share a strategy, a tip you have for a difficult conversation about making them more effective, or ask a question. And we will, I won't leave the silence for too long, but we will leave the chat box up for a couple minutes at the end of the webinar if people want to share. So I want to thank you for your continued level of participation in these webinars. This is a really important topic to discuss. And I want to thank you for your response to the survey, because without your input, the webinar wouldn't have been possible. So as we share our ideas with each other, we're going to continue to grow and learn in our PCS skills and develop our own unique style. So I hope you join us again in the future for more of these webinars. I want to thank you for your participation and have a great day.